If you do a quick history search, you'll find that the women's movement originally started off quite different from how many conceive modern feminism. Women were focused on creating better job opportunities for themselves and looking to gain the right to vote, along with other equal rights. And most of the women fighting for these rights were pro-life, not pro-abortion.
You can be pro-life and be a feminist?
Yes, you can be pro-life. What we're saying is that pro-life family feminism is the feminism of the 21st century. It was also the feminism of the suffragists. They were pro-life. The women who won us the right to vote were pro-life. Alice Paul called abortion the ultimate in exploitation of women. From the very beginning, feminism was pro-life.
Feminism, as the bumper sticker says, is the wonderful proposition that women are human beings. And so actually, in order to be a consistent feminist, you have to be pro-life, because the unborn are also human beings.
Dr. Helen Alvare and Ellen Browder, the author of Subverted, spoke at an event held by Live Action at the Heritage Foundation on Tuesday to talk about how the sexual revolution hijacked the women's movement of the 1960s.
The abortion movement worked really hard to lobby the feminist movement on the idea that it would be a winning combination for abortion. They didn't care about women.
In 1967, in the Chinese room of the Mayflower Hotel, on November 18, 1967, the National Organization for Women met to draw up their Bill of Rights. And there were only about 100 people in the room that night, mostly women, but even a few men. And they voted on what would be their political platform. At that very hour, the women's movement split into two different pieces. Pro-life feminists, who walked out and said, we can't abide by this abortion thing, and pro-abortion feminists who stayed in the National Organization for Women.
I'm still a little confused about how women could have thought, even then, before we had the data, that this would be good for them. And part of it is that people just got caught up in activism and weren't actually thinking, is this consistent?
In her book, Browder notes that contraception and abortion weren't even originally part of the 1960s women's movement. She explains that feminist Betty Friedan, the then president of the National Organization for Women, took it upon herself to speak to the press on behalf of all women.
When in fact she was just speaking for 57 people in the Chinese room. And because there was no reporter there, what could they do? They bought it. And the Washington Post that next day said, now, the National Organization for Women, the women's movement, embraces the sexual revolution of the 20th century by defending abortion, contraception, and sex education. So once the Washington Post said, hey, this is a woman's right, this is what women are wanting, then the other journalists began to follow suit, and pretty soon that just became the narrative in our story, that all feminists are for abortion. But in fact, that was never true.
So how do you reverse all the effects of what has happened over the past, 50 years or so?
Well, you know what? They're already being reversed, because you have to remember that those women who walked out of that room weren't invisible. Well, they were invisible in the media, okay, but they weren't invisible in the world. If you look at pro-abortion, look at Planned Parenthood and all of these pro-abortion groups, they'll be screaming and yelling that the states keep reversing all these laws. How do you think that happens? Pro-life women out there are fighting this thing, tooth, nail, they're fighting it like crazy. They're fighting it like crazy, and they're winning.
Absolutely.
And so we're winning even though we look like we're losing.
What is your ultimate goal then? Is it to reach those younger people? Is it to reach everyone? Because like with your book, like...
You know what I'd like to do? My dream, you want my dream?
Sure.
I'd like the journalists to wake up and realize that there's two different kinds of feminism out here duking it out. Okay. And to stop saying that all feminists are for abortion.
It's no surprise the media took an issue like this and exaggerated it to the degree where it is today. Hopefully we'll see a change on their side, but if not, we still have women like Ellen Browder and Dr. Helen Alvare that are doing what they can to teach people the truth about what's really taking place and what we can do about it. For MRC-TV, I'm Ferlin Webster Jr.